The contract was 6 pages thick, clipped beneath a black folder that looked too clean for Nora Hale's kitchen table. $15 million. Cash at closing. All 120 acres, all subsurface rights, every gallon of thermal water the resort company could legally pull from beneath the old limestone quarry. The attorney across from her tapped the number with one finger. Ms. Hale, you paid $3,500 for this property. Outside the window, January snow lay blue across the hills. Beyond the fence, where the quarry used to sit dead and white under winter frost, 12 greenhouse roofs glowed against the dark. Steam drifted from their vents. Inside them, tomatoes were setting fruit in a month, when farms around town usually slept. Nora did not look at the contract. She was watching her grandmother, Ruth, through the glass. 72 years old, canvas coat, gray hair tucked beneath a wool cap, walking slowly between the greenhouse rows with a clipboard pressed to her chest. The attorney cleared his throat. Your grandmother already signed the preliminary consent to review the offer. That made Nora look back, not angry, just surprised. The man leaned forward. We can close in 10 days. Your family never has to worry about another heating bill, another loan, another bad winter. He slid a pen toward her. $15 million sat between them. For 3 generations, people in that county had told the Hales they were trying to grow the wrong things in the wrong place. 16 months earlier, they had laughed when Nora bought the abandoned quarry. Now one of the largest resort developers in the state wanted everything beneath it. Nora picked up the pen, turned it once between her fingers, then set it down. No, the attorney stared at her. Nora looked back toward the glowing greenhouses. You paid $3,500 for that land. She nodded. Then you already know why I'm not selling it. 16 months earlier, nobody wanted the land at all. 16 months earlier, the land could not find a buyer. Not because nobody had seen it. Everybody had. 120 acres of fractured limestone sat 3 miles outside town where an old quarry had been cut into the hillside and then abandoned when the stone stopped being worth hauling. There was no creek. No topsoil worth naming. No stand of timber. Just white rock, old haul roads, rusted fence posts, and shallow pits that filled with brown water after rain and went dry again by July. At the county auction, the opening price was $3,500. Nobody raised a hand. Then Nora Hale did. A rancher named Calvin Rusk turned around in his folding chair and stared at her. You farming gravel now? A few people laughed. Nora signed the paper anyway. Outside, Calvin caught up with her by the courthouse steps. You didn't buy land, he said. You bought 120 acres of drainage. Nora folded the deed and put it inside her coat. That still sounds like something moving. Calvin laughed again. At the time, Nora did not know how important that sentence would become. She was 31 years old and had grown up 4 miles away in the last working greenhouse her family still owned. Her grandmother Ruth had run it for 43 winters. The place had once supplied lettuce, herbs, and early tomatoes to 3 counties. Now most of its profit disappeared through a propane line. That November, Nora came in after dark and found Ruth at the office desk with a yellow legal pad, a calculator, and 3 heating bills laid side by side. The burner in the next room roared hard enough to vibrate the wall. Ruth did not look up. Sit. Nora sat. Ruth pushed the ledger across the desk. Fuel, repairs, loan payment, plastic replacement, payroll. The numbers had been circled so many times the paper was beginning to tear. I can carry 1 more winter, Ruth said. Nora looked toward the greenhouse glass, black with night. And after that? Ruth closed the calculator. I can't carry another one. That was all. No argument, no tears, just a fact, delivered by a woman too tired to decorate it. Nora looked down at the deed in her coat pocket. $3,500 for land everybody else had already judged worthless. Part of her wanted to make it pay. Another part wanted something harder to admit. She wanted every person who had laughed in that auction room to someday understand they had been wrong. 3 weeks later, the first hard freeze came down from the mountains. By sunrise, frost covered the quarry from fence line to fence line. Everywhere except one narrow strip of limestone near the old south wall. 40 feet of pale rock, bare, dry, and somehow warmer than the winter around it. Nora saw the mist at 4:52 in the morning. She had come out to the quarry before sunrise because cold tells the truth better than daylight does. The thermometer on the truck mirror read 9 degrees. Every puddle on the property was locked solid. Frost silvered the fence wire, the weeds, the broken limestone scattered across the old haul road. But near the south wall, where that bare strip of rock had appeared 3 weeks earlier, something was moving. A thin white thread. Not smoke, not enough to call steam. Just mist lifting out of a crack in the limestone and disappearing into the dark. Nora crouched beside it. She held one hand over the fracture. Warm air touched her palm. Barely, but in 9-degree weather, barely was enough. She pressed her fingers to the stone. The rock was warmer than the ground around it. That should have been the moment she decided she had found something. It wasn't. Nora had grown up around greenhouses, pumps, boilers, wet soil, leaking lines, and equipment that behaved strangely whenever the temperature dropped. Warmth could come from 100 ordinary things: a buried pipe, rotting organic matter, old drainage, chemical residue left from the quarry. So she marked the crack with orange paint and came back the next morning. Then the next. For 12 mornings, Nora arrived before sunrise, carrying a notebook, 2 thermometers, and coffee she usually forgot to drink. She wrote down air temperature, stone temperature, wind, snow cover, the width of the frost line. Some mornings the mist was obvious. Some mornings there was almost none. On the 8th morning it disappeared completely. Nora stood over the crack for 20 minutes, waiting for something that never came. For the first time she felt embarrassed. Maybe Calvin had been right. Maybe she was staring at a warm rock because she needed it to mean something. She almost left. Then she pushed the probe against the limestone. The air was 11 degrees. The surrounding rock was 12. The fracture was 38. No mist, still warm. That changed the question. The mist was not the evidence. The temperature was. That afternoon, Nora showed Ruth the notebook. Ruth read 3 pages without saying anything. Then she opened a drawer beneath the greenhouse office desk and took out an old soil thermometer with a scratched brass stem. She set it beside Nora's hand. Measure it twice. That was all. 2 days later, while looking for old quarry maps, Nora found a cardboard box with her great-grandfather's name written across the lid. Inside were 30 years of winter temperatures, and most of them had been taken in exactly the same place. The box smelled like dust, machine oil, and the inside of an old barn. Nora carried it to the greenhouse office and spread everything across Ruth's desk. Receipts, quarry maps, payroll slips, a broken slide rule. Then, underneath a stack of equipment manuals, she found 23 sheets of graph paper folded into quarters. Each one had the same hand-drawn outline of the south quarry wall, and each one was covered with numbers: 28, 31, 26, 34. Dates ran down the margins from the late 1950s into the early 1980s. Nora knew the handwriting. Elias Hale, her great-grandfather. He had worked maintenance at the quarry for 32 years. At first, Nora thought she understood what she was looking at. Freeze damage. Limestone fractures collect water. Water freezes. Ice expands. Rock splits wider. A quarryman would have every reason to track winter temperatures near unstable stone. So Nora laid the old maps over a modern property survey and tried to match the numbers to known fracture zones. They did not line up, not even close. She spent 3 hours forcing the pattern to make sense. By noon, she was angry. By 1, embarrassed. Maybe the maps had nothing to do with the crack. Maybe she had found exactly what she wanted to find because she needed the land to be more than dead gravel. She was folding the last sheet when Ruth stopped beside the desk. You're reading them backward. Nora looked up. Ruth tapped one number. 37 degrees. The date beside it was January 14th, 1978. According to the weather notes in the margin, the air temperature that morning had been 8. Nora unfolded the sheet again, then another, and another. That was when she saw it. Elias had not marked the places that froze first. He had marked the places that refused to freeze at all. Year after year, the warm readings formed a crooked line across the south wall. The same line Nora had painted orange 3 weeks earlier. Her pulse quickened, but the maps did not tell her why. No note said geothermal. No arrow pointed underground. No dead man had left her an answer. Only a question he had apparently asked for 30 winters without solving. That afternoon, Nora drove a steel temperature probe into a fracture 6 feet from the warm strip. At 6 feet, the reading barely changed. At 12, it rose. At 18, it rose again. Ruth stood behind her, with both hands in her coat pockets. Nora stared at the gauge. She should have stopped there. Instead, she looked toward the old quarry road and said the sentence she would remember for years. "We need to go deeper." The drilling rig arrived on a Tuesday morning, with mud on its tires and frost still caught in the grass. It was not much of a rig, a used rotary unit owned by a contractor out of the next county, mounted on a truck that leaned slightly to the driver's side and rattled whenever the engine idled. Nora had enough money for one exploratory hole. That was the problem. One hole makes a person careful. It can also make them desperate to be right. She had marked the location herself, 6 yards from the warmest section of the fracture line. The old winter map said the anomaly crossed there. Her temperature reading said the ground grew warmer with depth. Everything she had measured seemed to point in the same direction. By late afternoon, they were 40 feet down, then 50. At 63 feet, the returning water grew noticeably warmer. The contractor, Ray Maddox, pulled off one glove and touched the pipe. "That's enough for today." Nora looked at the gauge, then at the frost map folded across the hood of her truck. March was getting closer. Every day she spent wondering was another day Ruth burned propane. "How much farther can you safely go?" Ray looked at her. "That wasn't what I said." Nora waited. He exhaled through his nose. "A few feet, then we stop." She should have taken the answer. Years later, when Nora tried to explain the difference between persistence and stubbornness, she always came back to what she said next. "Give me 6. The drill went down 4. At the 5th foot, the resistance disappeared. The bit dropped suddenly into open space. Ray reached for the controls. A hollow vibration came back through the casing. Then muddy water began climbing the bore. Fast. Ray killed the rotation. Back up. Water spilled over the casing and spread across the frozen ground. Then the flow surged. Hot mineral water shot upward into air cold enough to turn it instantly into dense white vapor. For several seconds, Nora could barely see the rig. Ray shouted for everyone to clear the area. They moved behind the trucks. Water continued pushing out of the bore, running down the old quarry road in steaming sheets. Along one existing fracture near the hole, muddy water began seeping through limestone that had been dry an hour earlier. That frightened Nora more than the vapor did. She had not simply found warm water. She had opened a path she did not understand. By the time the flow eased, Nora was standing beside her truck with both hands shaking. She had wanted proof. Now she had a hole she could not responsibly keep testing. Ray looked at her. "You calling the county?" Nora knew what that meant. Inspection. Delay. Maybe fines. Maybe the project ended before she even understood what she had found. She looked at the water moving through the quarry, then pulled out her phone. "I made the hole." 2 hours later, Ruth arrived just as a county truck came through the gate. "You called them yourself?" Nora nodded. Ruth looked at the wet limestone, the temporary barriers around the bore, then at her granddaughter. She said nothing. The first person out of the county truck was Mara Voss from Water Resources. The second vehicle belonged to Dr. Elias Mercer, a consulting geologist brought in after the county heard the words warm pressurized water and fractured limestone in the same sentence. Mercer stayed beside the bore until the vapor thinned. Then he crouched near the casing, studied the wet fracture, and looked up at Nora. "You didn't find a hot spring." Nora felt her stomach drop. Mercer stood. "You opened a pressurized water-bearing fracture." He looked back toward the bore. "And now, we need to find out what it actually is." Mara Voss did not care that the water was hot. That was the first thing Nora learned about her. She cared about pressure, flow, chemistry, where the water came from, where it might go, and what happened if somebody opened the wrong connection between the two. Mara stood beside the bore with a stainless clipboard tucked under one arm, while white vapor drifted low across the frozen ground. "Hot water isn't automatically a resource," she said. Nora looked at the test site. "What is it then?" "Until you understand it and control it." Mara glanced toward the bore. "A liability." Dr. Mercer was less interested in the spectacle than in the rock. He spent most of that afternoon walking the south wall with a hand lens and hammer, stopping every few yards to study the pale limestone. Near sunset, he called Nora over. He held up a block of intact stone, then poured a little water across it. Most of it ran off. Next, he pointed to a dark fracture cutting through the same piece. "The limestone itself isn't necessarily where most of the water moves." Nora frowned. Mercer tapped the crack. "The fractures can be the pathways." That changed the way she saw the quarry. For months, everyone had described the fractured limestone as damaged ground, broken, leaky, bad for building, bad for farming, bad for almost everything land was normally expected to do. But fractures could also move water. Snowmelt and rain from higher country could enter connected joints or faults. Groundwater could circulate downward. If the pathway reached deep enough, the water could gain heat before finding another route upward. Nora looked toward the ridge north of town. How far could it travel? Mercer shrugged. Could be a long way. And how long could it stay underground? That's harder to answer. He looked back at the fracture map. Long enough that we shouldn't pretend this hole tells us the whole story. The answer made the quarry feel larger than its 120 acres. Whatever moved beneath Nora's property might have started as rain or snow somewhere she had never owned. Mara did not allow the moment to become romantic. She handed Nora a temporary cease work order. No additional drilling until we have controlled testing, water chemistry, and a plan for handling discharge. Nora looked at the paper. March was 6 weeks away. Ruth's greenhouse was still burning propane every night. "You know what this delay costs me?" Mara met her eyes. "You know what an uncontrolled water system can cost everybody else?" Nora had no answer. That evening, Mercer spread Elias Hale's old frost maps beside a modern survey of the quarry fractures. The warm anomalies followed the same crooked zone Nora had been tracking. Not proof, but no longer something he was willing to dismiss. Then the laboratory called with the preliminary water chemistry. Mercer listened quietly. When he hung up, he turned the sheet toward Nora. "This doesn't look like the shallow groundwater samples from around here." Nora leaned over the page. "What does that mean?" "It means the water may have circulated deeper than the local groundwater we normally see." He tapped one column. "And probably through more rock." Nora looked toward the dark quarry outside. "So you think it's geothermal?" Mercer shook his head. "I think we finally have a reason to test that question properly." The controlled flow test started before sunrise. Mercer wanted 24 hours of uninterrupted readings. Mara wanted pressure logged every 15 minutes. Nora wanted one answer. Was there enough usable heat beneath the quarry to justify going further? They had secured the damaged bore, installed temporary control equipment, and reopened the water-bearing zone slowly. No guessing, no, another 6 feet. Everything measured, everything recorded. At 5:10 in the morning, hot water began moving through the test line. At first, Nora could not stop watching the white vapor rise where the water met the winter air. Mercer barely looked at it. He was watching the pressure. He drew a red pencil line across the chart. If pressure keeps dropping toward this range before morning, We may be dealing with limited stored water instead of a system that can support useful flow. Nora looked at the mark. And if it stabilizes, then we earn the right to run another test. That was Mercer's way of refusing to celebrate early. For the first 3 hours, the pressure dropped steadily. Nora wrote every reading down. By noon, the number had moved closer to Mercer's red line. By sunset, snow had begun falling over the quarry. The water kept coming, warm, mineral-heavy, steady. At 10 that night, Nora sat inside her truck with the heater off, staring through the windshield at the illuminated gauge. Pressure fell again, then slowed. An hour later, it had barely moved. At 4:30 in the morning, Mercer checked the chart twice, then once more. Temperature had held. Flow had held. Pressure had stopped its sharp decline. For the first time since arriving at the quarry, he smiled. Nora felt something inside her loosen. Not because they had proved the system would last forever, they had not, but because the anomaly had survived its first real test. The important thing beneath the quarry was no longer merely warm water. It was warm water that continued moving under controlled flow. By 8, Ruth arrived with coffee. Nora handed her the chart. Ruth studied it like one of her greenhouse ledgers. So? Nora looked at Mercer. He nodded once. You have enough evidence to stop calling this a strange warm crack. Ruth waited. Mercer looked toward the quarry. You have a thermal resource worth testing for direct use. Nora laughed before she could stop herself. For 20 minutes, the quarry felt different. The same abandoned roads. The same broken limestone. The same land nobody had wanted. But now they knew the heat was real enough to pursue. Then Mara's phone rang. The full mineral analysis had arrived. Mercer read it beside the test line. His expression changed. Nora saw it immediately. What? What? He handed her the report. The water carried a significant mineral load, enough that scaling and corrosion could become serious problems if they tried to run it directly through ordinary greenhouse heating equipment. Nora looked at him. But you just said the heat was usable. I said it was worth pursuing. Isn't that the same thing? No. Mercer tapped the report. You have heat. He glanced toward the Hale greenhouse 4 miles away. You just don't have a cheap way to move that heat into your greenhouse yet. The quarry had answered one question, and immediately created another. The first thing Nora turned off was the propane burner. Not permanently. Ruth would not allow that. But for one January morning, with snow packed against the greenhouse foundation and the outside thermometer sitting well below freezing, they shut the flame down and waited. The silence was strange. For 43 winters, that burner had been the heartbeat of the Hale greenhouse. When it stopped, Ruth looked toward the boiler room as if something had died. Nora looked at the temperature gauge. 59 degrees, then 58. Then it stopped falling. Across the room, a bank of metal pipes carried clean greenhouse water through a heat exchanger Nora and Mercer had spent weeks designing. The geothermal water never touched the plants. It entered one side hot and mineral-heavy, surrendered its heat through steel, then left again through a controlled return line. On the other side, ordinary clean water carried that heat beneath the benches. No flame, no propane truck, no mineral water in the irrigation lines. Just heat moving from one system into another. Outside, snow hissed against the greenhouse glass. Inside, condensation gathered on tomato leaves. Nora took off her coat. Ruth did not. Not yet. She walked the rows slowly, touching pipes, checking leaves, watching thermometers, like she expected one of them to confess. By noon, the temperature had held. At 2, sunlight came through the glass, and the greenhouse climbed 3 degrees without the burner firing once. Ruth stood in front of the old thermostat. Nora watched her. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Ruth turned the dial down 1 notch. That was all. No celebration. No speech about believing in Nora. Just one small turn of a plastic dial. But Nora understood what it meant. The quarry had stopped being a geological curiosity. It had become something the greenhouse could use. That changed the question completely. For months, Nora had been trying to prove there was valuable heat beneath land everybody called worthless. Now she had proved it. The harder question was what that heat should become. A private well? A commercial spa? A heating business? A way to keep one family greenhouse alive? She was still standing near the thermostat when headlights swept across the snow outside. A black SUV rolled through the gate. Then another. Both were too clean for farm work. 3 people stepped out. Wool coats, leather shoes. One of them carried a black document case. Ruth looked through the glass. "You expecting somebody?" Nora shook her head. The man with the case walked toward the greenhouse door. He did not look at the tomatoes. He looked past them, toward the quarry. And when he introduced himself, he did not ask Nora how much produce she could grow. He asked who owned the thermal rights beneath all 120 acres. The first offer was $7 million. Nora laughed because she thought the man was testing her. He wasn't. His name was Daniel Crow, acquisitions director for a resort development group with properties in Colorado, Montana, and Northern California. He did not care about tomatoes. He cared about hot water, mineral content, mountain views, and the fact that Nora controlled 120 acres around a thermal resource nobody else had access to. 7 million became 10 after the second survey. 10 became 12 after an independent flow test. Then the lawyers arrived. 43 days after the black SUV first crossed the greenhouse gate, Nora sat at Ruth's kitchen table, looking at a number printed halfway down page 4. $15 million. Cash at closing. She read it twice, then a third time. Below it was another line. Net to seller after closing. The number beneath that was still larger than anything the Hale family had earned in 3 generations combined. It would erase every greenhouse loan, replace every cracked panel, pay off Ruth's house, buy Nora another farm somewhere with black soil, easy water, and winters that did not require a propane truck to keep tomatoes alive. For the first time in years, Ruth could stop working because she wanted to, not because her body finally forced her to. Through the kitchen window, Nora could see her grandmother outside patching a torn section of greenhouse plastic with silver tape. $15 million on the table. Ruth on a ladder in January. That was what made the offer dangerous. Daniel Crow pushed the contract toward her. "We need all acreage, all thermal access, and exclusive development rights." Nora looked up. Exclusive? No third-party commercial use within the property boundary. What about the greenhouse loop? We would decommission it after closing. The room changed. Not dramatically. Nobody raised their voice. But Nora stopped seeing a number. She started seeing a fence. The company wanted to build a destination resort around the thermal resource. Pools, private cabins, mineral baths, a spa complex. Beautiful, probably. Profitable. Almost certainly. And the heat would belong to whoever could afford to sleep beside it. That evening, Ruth read the contract. Nora expected her to refuse before reaching the second page. Instead, Ruth closed the folder and said, "Take it." Nora stared at her. "You mean that?" "I mean I've spent 43 winters trying to get free of that furnace." Ruth looked toward the greenhouse. "Don't build another one just because this one happens to be underground." Nora had no answer. For 2 days, everyone she asked told her the same thing. Sell. The banker who had once refused Ruth an equipment loan called the offer generational money. Calvin Rusk drove over just to say she would be insane not to sign. Even Mercer told her $15 million was more than most people ever saw from owning land above a promising thermal resource. 48 hours later, Daniel Crow returned with the final contract. He placed a pen beside it. "Ms. Hale, nobody is going higher." Nora looked at him. "I didn't ask them to." She picked up the pen. For 1 second, Ruth thought she was going to sign. Instead, Nora placed it across the closed folder. "No." Daniel blinked. $15 million. "I heard you. You paid $3,500 for this land." Nora looked through the window toward the greenhouse pipes disappearing beneath the snow. "Yes." Daniel leaned back slowly. Then Nora said the sentence that would be repeated around town for months. That's exactly why I know selling it isn't the same thing as knowing what it's worth. For 3 weeks after Nora turned down $15 million, nothing happened. That was worse than failure. Failure at least gives you something to fight. Nothing gives people time to talk. The bank rejected her expansion loan first. The letter arrived in a white envelope with one sentence underlined twice. Insufficient collateral for projected development cost. 2 days later, Mara's office requested another round of monitoring before approving any additional thermal draw. Then the contractor revised the greenhouse expansion estimate. Steel was up, pipe was up, labor was up. The new number came in 42% higher than the first. By the end of the week, the story around town had changed. Nora was no longer the woman who found heat under dead gravel. She was the woman who turned down $15 million. At the diner, people stopped lowering their voices. She chose tomatoes over $15 million. Nora heard it from the booth behind her. The man saying it did not know she was there. That made it worse. She left without finishing her coffee. The cold settled in early that year. Propane deliveries were already running behind. One greenhouse outside town shut down rather than pay for another emergency tank. At the Hale place, Ruth began clearing a bay Nora thought they were still planning to use. Metal clanged against concrete. Nora found her grandmother unbolting one of the old aluminum benches. "What are you doing?" Ruth did not stop working. "Selling these." "Why?" "Because aluminum still has a price." Nora stared at her. "We need those benches." Ruth pulled another bolt loose. "We need cash more." That night, Nora sat alone in the greenhouse office. On one side of the desk was the bank rejection. On the other was the resort contract. $15 million, still valid for 6 more days. She opened it. For the first time since saying no, she wondered whether everybody else had been right. Maybe value was not what a thing could become. Maybe value was simply what someone was willing to pay before you ran out of time. Ruth came in carrying 2 mugs of coffee. She saw the contract. She did not ask what Nora was doing. Nora did. "Maybe I should call them back." Ruth set one mug down, then looked through the glass at the dark greenhouse rows. "Is this still about saving the greenhouse?" Nora frowned. "What else would it be about?" Ruth looked at her. "Proving them wrong." Nora said nothing. The auction room, Calvin, the bank. Everybody who laughed at this family for trying to grow through winter. Ruth sat across from her. "You keep saying you want to save this place." A long pause. "But sometimes I think you want an apology more." The words landed harder than Nora expected, because there was truth in them. If all she wanted was proof, she already had it. $15 million was proof. The whole county knew she had been right about the quarry, and somehow it was not enough. Nora looked past Ruth to the old frost map pinned above the filing cabinet. For months, she had treated those marks like inheritance. That night they looked more like a question. What was the point of discovering something valuable if the only thing you did with it was prove other people had missed it? Nora pulled the resort contract closer. Ruth watched. Nora turned it over. On the blank back page, she drew one rectangle, then another, 2 greenhouse blocks, a line between them. Then a second line returning toward the quarry. Ruth leaned forward. "What's that?" "A second heat loop." "For who?" Nora looked through the office window toward Calvin Rusk's daughter's greenhouse half a mile down the road. Calvin had asked twice that week what a future connection might cost. Nora kept drawing. "For somebody besides us." Over the next 6 days, she borrowed pipe, called in favors, and built a temporary test connection along the route she had drawn on the back of the $15 million contract. Mercer helped calculate limits. Mara approved it as a monitored temporary test, not an expansion. By the 6th afternoon, the line held pressure. That night, the temperature began to fall hard. Outside, wind pressed against the greenhouse glass. Inside, the sheet of paper that once offered Nora $15 million now carried grease marks, pipe lengths, and a route to the neighboring farm. By midnight, the temperature outside had fallen to 6 below zero. The wind came down off the ridge in hard, steady gusts and pushed against the greenhouse walls until the panels snapped in their frames. Inside the Hale greenhouse, Nora stood beside the geothermal controls with one hand on the valve wheel and the other near the temperature gauge. 58 degrees, then 57. The system was holding, barely. The temporary secondary line had passed its pressure test that afternoon. It had never carried a full heating load. Ruth stood near the old propane burner, still dark. Neither woman said what they were both thinking. If the geothermal system failed tonight, Nora still had time to call Daniel Crow and ask whether $15 million remained on the table. At 12:18, the phone rang. It was Calvin Rusk. His daughter's greenhouse boiler had failed. Not slowed, failed. 42 degrees inside and falling. Seedlings first, then young tomato plants. By morning, most of the crop would be gone. Calvin did not ask Nora for money. He asked one question. Can that heat of yours reach us? Nora looked at the temporary line she had spent 6 days building. Mercer checked the numbers. We can send some heat. Ruth heard what he did not say. Can the system hold both? Mercer looked at Nora. We haven't tested that much draw in weather like this. There it was, the choice. Keep everything for the Hale greenhouse and protect the proof she had fought months to build, or divide the heat and risk both operations. For most of her life, Nora had wanted one clean moment when everybody who laughed at her family would finally have to admit they had been wrong. This could have been that moment. She could save her own greenhouse, let Calvin lose his, and nobody could reasonably blame her. Nora looked through the glass toward the darkness beyond the property line, then at the valve. Open the second loop. Mercer opened it slowly. The temperature in the Hale greenhouse began to fall. 57, 55, 54. Across the road, Calvin called out numbers from his daughter's greenhouse. 42, 46, 49. Nora watched her own gauge. 53. Ruth folded her arms. 52. Then the decline slowed. Across the road. 51, 53, 54. The Hale greenhouse stayed just above 52. Calvin's climbed another degree. Neither system had much room left. But both had stopped moving in the wrong direction. Nobody celebrated. Not yet. They waited until daylight. At 6:41, the first gray light came over the ridge. The Hale tomatoes were still alive. So were Calvin's daughters. Later that morning, Calvin walked into Nora's greenhouse without his hat. He stood beneath the warm pipes and looked at the rows for a long time. Then he asked the question nobody in town had ever asked about the quarry before. Not how much water, not how many acres, not what some developer might pay for it. How much heat do you have? Nora looked toward the secondary line disappearing beneath the snow. For months, she had thought the answer would prove what the land was worth. That morning, she understood the more important question was how much of that value could be shared without destroying the thing that made it possible. By February, people stopped calling it Nora's hot spring. They started calling it heat. That difference mattered. Hot springs belonged on postcards. Heat could keep a greenhouse alive. 3 weeks after the cold snap, the county held a public hearing on Nora's proposal to extend the geothermal loop to 4 more greenhouses. The meeting room was packed. Growers, ranchers, county staff, 2 bankers who had once declined to finance the project. Calvin Rusk sat in the second row, the same man who had watched Nora buy the quarry and told her she had purchased 120 acres of drainage. Before the meeting started, he found her beside the coffee table. He nodded toward the maps under her arm. So how much heat can one of those lines carry? Nora looked at him. For a moment, she could have given him the answer he deserved 16 months earlier. Instead, she smiled. You were right about one thing. Calvin raised an eyebrow. It was drainage. He waited. Nora looked toward the fracture map. You just never asked where the water had been. Calvin studied her for a second, then nodded once and took his seat. Mara Voss opened the hearing. She had spent months being the person most willing to tell Nora no. That afternoon, she did not apologize for any of it. I opposed expansion until pressure behavior, chemistry, thermal recovery, and winter drawdown were documented. A few people shifted in their chairs. Mara closed one report. The data supports a controlled first phase. Then she turned toward Nora. Nora, show them the winter drawdown figures. Something changed in the room. 6 months earlier, Nora had been the woman standing outside a damaged bore while county officials explained what she had done wrong. Now the county engineer was asking her to explain the system. Nora stepped to the front. She showed them what happened when the secondary loop opened, how quickly pressure recovered, how much heat the 2 greenhouses had actually drawn, what operating limits Mercer had recommended. A board member near the end of the table leaned forward. What happens if the reservoir starts declining? Everyone waited. The old Nora might have said it wouldn't. She might have defended the quarry because she needed it to be right. Instead, Nora looked at the monitoring chart. Then we reduced the draw. The board member kept watching her. And if it keeps declining, then we stop before we damage it. The room went quiet. Nora looked around the table. We don't own the heat just because we found it. Mara lowered her eyes toward the report, hiding the beginning of a smile. The board approved a monitored first phase connecting 4 additional greenhouses. There were conditions: continuous pressure monitoring, drawdown limits, quarterly reporting, authority to reduce flow if recovery changed. Not everyone voted yes, but it passed. 2 days later, Nora got another call from the bank. She expected another rejection. Instead, the loan officer asked whether she would review financing terms for Phase 2, assuming the monitored expansion performed the way the first system had. Nora drove into town, sat across from the same desk where her first application had been declined, and listened while the banker explained projected returns, collateral structure, and cooperative participation. When he finished, he slid the papers toward her. Nora did not reach for the pen. She looked at the first page, then at him. What's the rate? Outside, snow still covered most of the county, but beneath 120 acres of land nobody had wanted, something had begun moving through the town that could not be laughed away anymore. By the following winter, the Hale greenhouse was no longer alone. 6 properties were connected to the thermal loop: a nursery on the North Road, 2 vegetable houses, Calvin Rusk's daughter's tomato operation, a small herb grower near the highway, and 1 new greenhouse built on land that had sat empty for 11 years because nobody could make winter heating pencil out. The quarry had not made Nora rich, not in the way $15 million would have. There were still loans, maintenance schedules, monitoring wells, meetings, arguments over flow limits. But for the first time in decades, winter did not automatically mean shutting down. One night in January, Nora found Ruth standing in the boiler room. The old propane burner was running on low backup. Ruth looked at the geothermal temperature gauge, then at the pressure reading, then back at the burner. For 43 winters, that machine had decided what the family could afford to grow, how late they could plant, how cold a night they could survive, how much risk they were allowed to take. Ruth reached for the control, turned it from LOW to standby. Click. The flame died. She stood there listening to the silence. Nora said nothing. Neither did Ruth. She just picked up her coffee and walked back toward the greenhouse rows. A week later, Nora framed her great-grandfather's old winter map and hung it inside the packing shed. Beside it, Mercer helped her mount a new one. The old map was covered in temperature dots nobody had understood. The new map had red lines running outward from the quarry. At the end of each line was a name: Hale, Rusk, Dawson, Miller, Ortiz, Green, Ruth. Stood beneath both maps for a long time. He knew something was wrong with the cold, she said. Nora looked at the old pencil marks. No. Ruth glanced at her. Nora looked toward the greenhouse lights beyond the wall. He knew something was different. That was what $15 million could never have bought. Not the heat, not the land. The chance to turn something one family discovered into something an entire town could keep. Years later, the first place to lose its snow was still the same fracture along the old south wall. Nora noticed it every winter. The quarry would turn white overnight. Fence posts, haul roads, broken limestone, everything buried under frost. Then morning would come, and one narrow line of rock would appear first. Dark, wet, warm. The fracture everyone once treated as damage. Nora stood there one January before sunrise and watched a thin ribbon of mist rise into the cold. Across the valley, greenhouse lights came on one by one. Hale, Rusk, Dawson, Miller, Ortiz, Green, small yellow rectangles glowing against the snow. For years, people had judged that land by everything it could not do. It could not hold topsoil. It could not grow pasture. It could not carry timber. It was cracked limestone, bad drainage, dead gravel. They thought the fractures ruined it. The fractures were the reason the water could move. And the moving water was the reason heat could reach the surface. Nora looked down at the same crack that had started everything. Some land is worthless only because we keep asking it to produce the wrong thing. And sometimes, the part everybody calls broken is the part that lets the value through. So tell me this, what is the thing in your town people stopped paying attention to because they decided it was useless? And where are you watching from? I read those answers because sometimes the next valuable thing is already there. We just forgot how to look.